So I wasn't going to make this video at first because this is one of those things where I think people sort of come in with their own like preconceived ideas, and most people are unwilling to have those ideas challenged. Like, people just believe what they're going to believe. Even if you provide like legit evidence against what they believe, they're going to believe it anyway. And I've actually encountered that in my last video on this. Like, there were literally people who said, yeah, I see that you posted sources, but that doesn't prove anything, which is what? And I also had more than one person say like, hey, I see that you did this research and you provided your sources, but I don't feel like doing research for myself. I've been convinced of something and I'm just going to believe it anyway. I mean, I literally had people say that. I mean, not verbatim those words, but that idea was expressed to me. And the purpose of my videos is to start conversations and get people to think about stuff. So when I see that a video is not promoting that kind of conversation or that kind of honest dialogue, I get a little hesitant to sort of continue that conversation. But I have to remember like who I make videos for and the reason I make videos. Like, you're always going to get these people, especially when you talk about certain topics, and I can't really do anything about that. So I feel like I shouldn't, hold back or change my content just because there are a few people that aren't engaging with it the way that I'd like them to. And honestly, like, it wasn't that bad. There was just, more than average of people sort of doing this sort of thing. And I even tweeted out that I probably wasn't going to make this video, but there were so many ideas that I saw over and over again that I just wanted to address them for the people that actually care about what I have to say about that. I know a lot of you don't care what I have to say. You're just, here to just yell at me and just believe what you want to believe. And that's fine. Do what you want to do. But my videos aren't really for those people. And I have to remember who my videos are for and provide, that kind of content for the people that came here for that. And it's been a while since I've done a REDUX video anyway, and I think that they're like a really good idea, and I've had a lot of people tell me that's a good idea. So I want to do them more because it's all about having conversations. Hi, I'm T1J. Follow me on Twitter. Welcome to another REDUX video. If you didn't know, a REDUX video is when I go back to a video that I did before and respond to a lot of the most common comments that I got on that video, the most common ideas. Not like specific comments, but just common ideas. Usually when I make a video, since everyone doesn't see everyone's comments, you see like a ton of comments that say the same thing, and I don't want to go and individually respond to each person with the same thing. So that's the point of the REDUX videos. Today we're going to talk about ideas that were presented in response to my video about the gender pay gap. Okay, so one comment that I got a lot was this small leftover unexplained gap that's probably under 10% is not what people are referring to when they talk about the wage gap. When people say the wage gap is a myth, we're talking about that 77 cents on the dollar thing that all these people, are, including the president, have talked about. So a lot of people are saying, yeah, we agree with you that there's a small unexplained pay gap, but that's not what we're talking about when we talk about the wage gap myth. So if you want to say that the idea that women make 77 cents or 80 cents to a man's dollar is a myth, then say that. Don't say the wage gap is a myth, because that sentence is false. And this idea that no one says the wage gap is a myth, that's just completely disingenuous, because I've heard that exact sentence so many times from so many people. And that's what I was responding to in my last video. If that's not the argument that you make, then that's not what I was responding to. It's important to explain the context of what you're talking about when you have a debate. Don't just make a broad statement like the wage gap is not a myth, because that's just not a true statement. In my video, I explained the context. I said that most of the gap is explained by women's choices and other things, but there's still a gap. I didn't make a broad statement like there's no wage gap and just left it at that. I explained the context. So you should do the same thing if you're going to argue from the other side. Also, if you want to have a serious conversation about the wage gap, about feminism, or about anything, we need to have a groundwork of like intellect and honesty. Like, if you want to make all these arguments against what Jezebel says about the wage gap, Like, who cares what BuzzFeed and Jezebel says about the wage gap? They're not the arbiters of intellectual conversation. It's like intellectually lazy. It's like low-hanging fruit. Like, if you want to have a serious conversation, then go to people who are like actually doing research and talking about this in a real way. And some of you are like, but even the president says it. Dude, the president is a politician. The president says a lot of stuff. He also said he was going to close Guantanamo Bay, and we see how that went. He just says whatever he needs to say to get you to pay attention. He's a politician. You should never try to get your facts and sources from politicians. Never. Don't do that. If what you are trying to do is to criticize these silly, like, non-intellectual conversations that are happening in the mainstream, feel free to do that, but don't pretend that you're involved in some kind of actually interesting conversation. Okay, so another comment that I got a whole bunch was the idea that there's no way that there could be a wage gap because it's illegal to pay men and women different amounts of money for the same job. And people drop this one down as if it's like the ultimate trump card. Like, we didn't think about that. It's like, oh shit, it is illegal. There's no way. Like, no, you gotta think a little bit. First of all, it's not illegal to pay men and women different amounts for the same job. It's illegal to pay men and women different amounts for the same job on the basis of gender, but it's not illegal to pay two people different amounts for the same job. In fact, that's pretty common. Yeah, you can't do it on the basis of gender, but you can do it on the basis of other things like education or experience or qualifications. An employer can pay people different amounts for any reason that they want, as long as they can find some kind of justification for it. This is the whole concept when we're talking about negotiating pay and asking for raises. This is why a lot of people make different amounts of money for the same job, because when you're in that first interview or that last interview, you negotiate your salary. And as we know, women are less likely to negotiate very hard for higher wages, and that's one of the contributors to the wage gap. I'm not sure about other countries, but in America, salary transparency is a huge problem. Like, it's a huge taboo in America to talk about money, and this encourages the wage gap. You should check out this clip from the excellent show Adam Ruins Everything, where he talks about this. So even if employers were just overtly and proudly sexist, all they would have to say is, no, I'm paying them less because they were less qualified. But it doesn't have to be overt sexism. There are lots of studies that suggest that women are perceived as being less competent and less able than men. So it could be related to the inherent bias. You see two candidates and one of them you perceive as being less competent, so you offer them less money. I'm not saying that this is what happens 100% of the time, but this whole it's illegal so it can't happen is just not tenable. So that whole it's illegal argument sort of transposes into this distinction between wage gap and earnings gap, which of the arguments I'm talking about today, this one is the most annoying. So people are like, wage gap is inaccurate. It should be called an earnings gap. And this is sort of related because people don't think that two people can be paid different amounts for the same job, which is not true. So, but they think that since that doesn't happen, then you shouldn't call it a wage gap. You should call it an earnings gap. Okay, first of all, this is a semantic argument, which are the worst kind of argument. When I'm trying to express an idea and then someone comes at me saying, you're using the wrong word to express that idea, I immediately take you a little less seriously, because you're intentionally ignoring the main idea of what I'm saying and focusing on the semantics of the fucking syntax. Don't do that. But this is even more annoying because it is inaccurate. Yes, women earn less than men because of a lot of factors, but the data we have suggests that once you account for all of those factors, all things being equal, hour by hour, women still make less than men. So until you have data that disproves that, I will continue to call it a wage gap. But I mainly want to stress that this is a semantic argument that diverts us from the actual thing that we're trying to talk about, and I don't appreciate that. Okay, so the next thing that you see a lot whenever someone talks about this is this idea like, well, if employers can get away with paying women less than men, then why don't everyone just hire women? And this idea assumes that all businesses and all companies are like this hive mind that goes through this same step-by-step formula in terms of how they hire people. And that formula is based on what is the absolute least amount of money I can pay everyone that I hire. And obviously that's a silly idea, because if it were true, then everyone in America would make minimum wage because that is literally the least amount you're legally allowed to pay someone. On top of that, people negotiate their salaries, people get raises, people get promotions. Obviously, more goes into it than what's the least amount that I could pay. There are lots of factors and reasons that go into why someone gets hired. Sometimes companies are super desperate and just need a position filled and they hire the first person that walks in the door. Sometimes a company doesn't need any positions filled and they still hire someone just because they gave a really good interview. Sometimes people get hired because of nepotism. Sometimes people get hired because they were sleeping with the boss. Sometimes people get hired because the boss just happened to be in a good mood that day and wanted to give someone a chance. This idea that capitalism dictates that all businesses try to pay all employees as low as possible is just super oversimplistic. Also, if a company actually did want to hire only women, that would be super fucking obvious and they probably wouldn't get away with it. Like, obviously. Is this one even serious? I'm not so sure anymore. So another reasons why I didn't want to do this video at first is because there are better conversations that we could be having. Like, we know that a lot of the wage gap is accounted for by women's choices, but I think an interesting conversation is, why do women make those choices? Why do women take more time off? Why do women accept part-time jobs more often? Why are women less likely to negotiate their salary? Some people argue that women are just biologically predisposed to being bad at leadership and finance. To me, that just doesn't sound very convincing, but if you have an argument for that, I'd like to hear it. And secondly, after we factor in all those choices, the data suggests that there's still an unexplained gap, and every study that has been done on this seriously finds an unexplained gap. So the next part of the discussion is, what is the cause of that gap? Discrimination happens more than zero, so discrimination is a part of it, but we don't know how big a part of it. It could be a very small part, or it could be most of it. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's something that we could explore. But instead, we spend so much time discussing whether or not there is a gap to begin with, even though the data clearly shows that there is. So it's hard to even get to those more interesting conversations. But maybe we'll get there someday. That's just me though. Thank you for watching this video. Check out this video I made about pop feminism, who are responsible for that whole 77 cents thing. I want to give a shout out to all of the new subscribers. How you doing? And remember, be honest, be assertive, be kind, and be open-minded. If you agree with that, throw me a Heiko in the comments. And subscribe if you like my hair. Thank you once again for watching my video. I've been pushing my Patreon at the end of basically every single one of my videos for several months now, and I hope it's not too annoying. Like, you can skip it if you want to, I won't be mad. But it has resulted in a lot of you just knowing more about Patreon and supporting me on Patreon, which has been amazing, and it's allowed me to do this to an extent that I never thought that I'd be able to. So I just want to give a big shout out, big thanks to all of you that support me on Patreon. I just wanted to update you guys about my next goal for Patreon. Right now it says on the front page a little under $300 per video, and that's not completely accurate. Like, I'm not getting $300 for every single video, but that amount, you know, sort of represents like the starting point for the first video, and it kind of tapers off after that. But my next goal for Patreon is to get to $450 as that first, you know, standard number on the front page. And the reason I chose that number is because I did a little math, and I think that if I reach that goal, I will be able to say, like, this is like literally my full-time job. Don't get me wrong, I'm a full-time YouTuber. This is the main source of income that I have. And don't get me wrong, I don't regret anything, but I've made a lot of sacrifices to pursue this. And if I reach this goal, that would allow me to just, you know, go as far as I want to go with this channel. I've said on my Patreon to the people that are actually on Patreon, I've said that I'm going to do a weekly live stream once I hit that point. And I want to do a lot of cool stuff like travel, do meetups and things like that. Just things that I haven't been able to do before. So as always, if you find any value in the videos that I make, or if you just want to support me, it would be great if you thought about becoming a patron. And even if you can't, you don't feel like it, you don't want to, that's fine. I just thank you for all your support. I thank you for watching my video.